I want to talk today about the Devout. So the Devout are like probably my favorite IG, by which I don't necessarily mean it's something that I want to be aligned with throughout the entire game. What I mean by it's my favorite, I mean that by teaching you how to use the Devout, I can teach you how to use any IG in the game. So the first thing you need to understand about an IG is what it is. So it's got this political strength number right here, right? You can see that, and that political strength number is the thing that's going to determine the percentage of total clout in your country. That's going to come from the wealth, the sum total entire wealth of all of the pops that support that IG, as well as an average wealth per politically active pop. So that way there's like a little bit of, if there are more of you, then it matters more, but you need to be wealthy. There's also a small modifier sometimes from specific leaders, as well as a multiplier here. But that's just like the basic overview and does not even come close to telling you anything about the Devout. So the first and I think most important thing about the Devout over here is this interest group population thing, because that's going to tell you what professions care about this interest group. And then it also tells you if there's like a modifier, and in this case there is. There's a literacy modifier here. And so what all of this cumulatively should tell you, just looking over interest group population, once you get familiar with how the world develops in Victoria 3, you'll know that peasants, clergymen, and aristocrats are largely not going to be employed as you build and build and build in your country, because you don't have a lot of those sorts of jobs when you're doing a heavy industry economy. And in an industry economy, if you're trying to build a strong economy, is almost always going to be stronger than an agricultural economy here in Victoria 3, as well as in the 19th century. So this is just kind of telling you that, like, the longer the game goes on, the less you need to fear them as a political force that will fight back against you. But for the astute amongst you, or for those of you who have seen my Kome footage, you should recognize that some of these professions sound awfully familiar, and that's why in the Kome videos, and for that matter, just like generally speaking, if you start with a powerful landowner group that you want to get rid of, I recommend very strongly that you align yourself temporarily with the Devout. The Devout will give you extra authority, which will allow you to run higher consumption taxes. The consumption taxes can be targeted at the landowner. You also can get this extra be fruitful and multiply, which at the beginning of the game, if you're playing a country that has a strong landowner, there's a very good chance that you're not going to have particularly liberal laws on church and state or citizenship, in which case you might actually need the population growth from this. The specific laws that they support, that the Devout support, also are largely not going to get in your way, with a couple of exceptions. They typically they oppose multiculturalism unless they have an ideology that pops up here, and they usually don't care about either slavery or serfdom, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that if you take votes away from the landowners and you give them to the Devout, then you're moving votes from opposition to abstain, which is a big victory, right? Opposition to abstain is a big victory when it comes to trying to get those sorts of votes through. But also it means that you can't count on the Devout to help you get things done. Basically what you can use them for is what I typically recommend using them for, which is draining clout from the landowners to them, and then using the Devout as sort of like your legitimacy, so that way you can bring in the actual faction that you want to work with, but you bring in the faction you want to work with as a minority faction, while you have the Devout there as the majority faction that kind of lends credence to the legitimacy of your government. So yeah, that's Devout. They are an absolute masterpiece of a class. I think they're really interesting. They also they tell you a lot about how laws are important in terms of the clout that you can generate, because you can do a lot of stuff to support a powerful devout into the mid or late game if you want to, right? You can run religious schools. Religious schools are not a bad law by any means, but if you're running religious schools, you're going to have a powerful devout longer, which means you're going to have a much bigger difficulty getting all the way down to multiculturalism, because devout will oppose it almost all of the time. All right, that's Walker, that's IGs, and that's devout.